dealing, woo, wheeling dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, son of a gun.
From the past.
I am a real American.
To the present. And the future.
Chair of wheels, more of lawn. Chair of wheels, more of lawn.
You are listening to Penn State's only WWE talk show, Marking Out with Jason Marcus and Matt Freiler.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another edition of the Marking Out podcast, Penn State's only pro wrestling exclusive podcast. We got a lot to talk about today. We got a lot from Monday Night Raw, Smackdown, NXT, Impact Wrestling even, Ring of Honor, and New Japan Pro Wrestling. So let's waste no time. Let's get right into it. Let's start to cover Monday Night Raw this week. And it started off with a pretty good segment, I would say, between Bobby Lashley and Roman Reigns, who are scheduled to face off this Sunday at Extreme Rules. It was one of those segments where it was, the big confrontation ends with the entire roster coming out and pulling them apart. And I thought it was good, but for my taste, I feel like we've seen it a lot over the past couple of years specifically. I know they did it with Reigns Undertaker, Lesnar Undertaker. It seems like anytime they have a bit high-profile one-on-one match that they want to get over, this is their go-to segment. And it obviously works for them, so all power to them. But I just feel like it didn't have as much impact as I feel like it could have had because I've seen it so many times over the past couple of years. So that was that opening segment, and I thought that was pretty good. It was the only time we would see Reigns and Lesnar throughout the night. So we'll see what happens at Extreme Rules. Then right after that, we went into a tag team match with Nia Jax and Natalya versus Alexa Bliss and Mickie James. Match was okay. Nothing really special here. The big news was that Nia Jax and Natalya got the win. So that is setting up for the Raw Women's Championship match this Sunday at Extreme Rules between Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax. Of course, Alexa Bliss, the champion, going in to defend. I think it's an Extreme Rules match, so I'd have to believe that Ronda Rousey's going to get involved. She has been advertised as to be sitting in the front row for that. So I'd bet a lot of money that Rousey gets involved and sets up that match with her match at SummerSlam. But overall on the Raw show, it was an okay tag team match. Doesn't really get me too excited for their match at Extreme Rules, though. After that, we had Mojo Rawley versus No Way Jose, which was exactly what you thought it would be. I mean, Mojo Rawley's character development is getting better. He's clearly the heel now. He's no longer that stay hyped baby face, which was super annoying. But he wins with the Alabama Slam here, so possibly a new finisher for him. But overall, yeah, he gets the win on Monday Night Raw, but I don't see him going up anytime soon as far as up within the card. Even in a mid-card title run, I feel like there's just so many other people that are more deserving for the Intercontinental title run than Mojo Rawley. So, but the other question I had with this match is, why did we call up No Way Jose if he's just going to get jobbed out to Mojo Rawley on a weekly basis? That one doesn't really make too much sense to me. I feel like he didn't even do anything in NXT, so it doesn't make sense that you called him up now just for him to lose. I guess if you just needed jobbers, that's the only thing I can think of. But yeah, I mean, Mojo Rawley and No Way Jose with Adam Rose's old gimmick, it was, like I said, exactly what you would expect, nothing special. Some other things that we had on the card. Throughout the night, they were doing this segment with Kurt Angle and Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens is really funny, and I think we all knew that, but his comedic timing, I think, is honestly one of the best on the roster. He's hiding from Braun Strowman in these segments, so this past Monday Night on Raw was camping out in Kurt Angle's office. It's just really funny stuff there, but that segment concluded with Angle making the announcement that this Sunday, Strowman and Owens would be going one-on-one inside of a steel cage match. So that set that up, which I think they will have a very good match at Extreme Rules. But after Strowman won the Money in the Bank briefcase last pay-per-view, I actually feel like his stock has kind of declined a little bit. I feel like post-WrestleMania, he was really hot. Me and Ryan were talking about in the last couple podcasts ago. He was probably the hottest babyface on the entire roster. He won the Greatest Royal Rumble event. And now I just feel like he kind of isn't really doing much. Obviously, he's in this program with Kevin Owens, but there's really no big story other than Owens is just afraid of him. I mean, they're both great professional wrestlers in their own individual, for what it's worth, but overall, the program just really isn't doing it for me, but I do think they will still be able to find a way to have a good match at Extreme Rules, so not too worried about that. Also going on throughout the show, we had segments between Sasha Banks and Bayley, and this is just, I'm not a fan. I wasn't honestly even a fan when they did it a couple years ago with Daniel Bryan and Kane, which is fitting that they're bringing it back now. These women just deserve so much more than what they're given right now. Sasha Banks and Bayley are two of the best women's wrestlers in the entire planet, and the fact that they're being delegated to this role, especially when there's so much story and there's so much history between those two specifically, you could be doing so much more, and the fact that this is the route they've chosen after they've teased the heel turn for months now, and this is the direction that they chose, I feel like it's just completely underwhelming. They don't even have a match for Extreme Rules, so really low on the stock of Sasha Banks and Bayley right now, and I hope they turn it around really soon. I know there's a lot going on in the Raw Women's division with Ronda Rousey, Nia Jax, and Alexa Bliss, but these women deserve so much more than what they're getting right now. Truthfully, I hope their program ends soon and they can both go in different directions because this has just been an absolute mess from the beginning. After that, we went into a match between Bo Dallas and Matt Hardy. Of course, Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel, the B team, will be facing Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt for the Raw Tag Team Championships this Sunday at Extreme Rules. So they had a singles match here to kind of build to that. And surprisingly or not, Bo Dallas actually picked up the win here. Not something that you see a lot from Bo Dallas or Curtis Axel, for that matter, to get a singles win on Monday Night Raw. But they do pick up the win. Gives them a little momentum going into the Raw Tag Team Championship match. I'm actually a little more excited for this match than I probably should be. I think booking-wise, it's going to be very interesting because I could see them going in both directions. I think Dallas and Axel are more than deserving of this spot. I think they've worked really hard. They obviously have put in their dues over the past couple years. So excited to see them in the title picture. Not 100% sure they're going to be able to pick up the win on Sunday, but at least, you know what, they have a pay-per-view match, and that's more than what some people can say. So good for them, and I'm excited to see them come Extreme Rules. Next match we had Ember Moon and Liv Morgan. No real match here, kind of just a television storyline that they've kind of been brewing, but Ember Moon picks up the win clean. Second win in a row for Ember Moon, so is that program now dead? Where does Ember Moon go from here? I don't know, but she's obviously a huge star, especially for that Raw Women's division that we just talked about. It's completely crowded right now, so maybe that's part of the reason Sasha Banks and Bayley are being pushed down the card, but like I said, they deserve so much more. But nonetheless, Ember Moon is great talent. She's got a big thing. She's definitely a future champion. So we'll see where that goes. But for right now, she's kind of just stuck in this program with the Riot Squad for what it's worth. We then had a tag team match between Constable Baron Corbin, and Elias versus Finn Balor and Bobby Roode. Good match. Obviously, all four of these participants are world-class athletes, really good professional wrestlers here. Baron Corbin and Elias pick up the win after Corbin hits the end of days on Bobby Roode, setting up their match at they're setting up the match at Extreme Rules this Sunday between Constable Baron Corbin and Finn Balor. Kind of my similar thoughts as to the Sasha Banks and Bayley feud. I feel like all these guys are so much more deserving of a higher spot. And this Corbin Balor feud is just not doing it for me. They're doing it actually really well on Twitter. That's probably the best thing that they got going on for their angle right now, is they were going back and forth on Twitter. So had some really entertaining stuff. So if you want to check that out, I guess. But other than that, especially Finn Balor, he has been treated so poorly since coming back from injury almost a year and a half ago. Hasn't had a major program run. Has never even got a shot at his Universal Championship that he lost back in 2016. So He peaked in NXT. He hasn't been the same since he got hurt when he got called up to the main roster. So hopefully they have bigger plans moving forward with Finn Balor, because he is too much of a talent to be wasted like he is at this point. And I don't know what's going to happen at Extreme Rules. I will have my official predictions at the end of when I get done talking about the Smackdown segment. I'll go through the card and give my official predictions. But as far as this tag team match went, I thought it was okay, but nothing special. And then the last thing that happened was the main event, which was Seth Rollins versus Drew McIntyre. Seth Rollins will be facing Dolph Ziggler for the Intercontinental Championship in a 30-minute Iron Man match this Sunday at Extreme Rules. I am most excited for this pay-per-view out of any match on the card, because these are two of the best workers in the entire company. You give them 30 minutes, and they're going to put on a show. It most likely will be match of the night. I don't think there's much question about that. But the match that they had on Monday Night Raw in the main event was Seth Rollins versus Drew McIntyre, and if Drew McIntyre won, then he would be able to be ringside for the Iron Man match, and if he lost, he would be banned. Really good match. Went about 15 to 20 minutes. Just what you would expect from Rollins and McIntyre, because they are two of the best workers in the company. Ended with McIntyre hitting the Claymore after Dolph Ziggler got involved. Picked up the 1-2-3, so McIntyre will be present at ringside for Seth Rollins and Ziggler's match at Extreme Rules. So you got to figure he's probably going to get involved in the finish there in some way as well. So that was Monday Night Raw. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to preview SmackDown and NXT. You were listening to Marking Out.
Now back to Com Radio's only WWE talk show, Marking Out with Jason Marcus and Matt Freiler.
Welcome back to Marking Out, the only pro wrestling exclusive talk show. I'm your host, Jason Marcus. We just got finished talking about this past week's episode of Monday Night Raw as we head toward the Extreme Rules this Sunday. Now we're going to shift to SmackDown this last night. It was a decent show overall, very much a go-home, like kind of filler show. Not too much going on, but we'll go through it nonetheless. So it started off with a segment of Miz TV, but obviously the host, The Miz, and his guests were Daniel Bryan and Kane, the reunited team Hell No. Started off with The Miz kind of just trying to say that, he's so excited that they're reunited, but then it quickly turned to, I'm trying to break you apart. You got, he basically brought up their history when they had the program together where Kane was the heel. And so basically the end of the segment is Daniel Bryan and Kane turn on The Miz, but it sets up a 10-man tag team match for later in the night between, on one side you had Kane, Daniel Bryan, and The New Day, and on the other side you had the members of Sanity and the Bludgeon Brothers. So that was their main event. I thought the match was a really fun match, especially when you have that many people involved. The ending segment was what you would expect, everyone hitting their finishers on each other in succession. The final end of the match was when Kofi Kingston hit Trouble in Paradise on Eric Young to pick up the win for his team, which I thought was a questionable decision because you had just brought up Sanity from NXT to the main roster, and you already gave them their first loss. They will be facing the New Day in a tables match on the Extreme Rules kickoff show, for what it's worth. So maybe they'll get a chance to redeem themselves there, but you just questionable decision from my end to give a loss to the faction that you literally just called up. But hey, I guess I'm just nitpicking there. What else we had going on? We had so AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura had a one-on-one match for a little bit. That was quickly interrupted when Rusev attacked AJ Styles, setting up the disqualification. Rusev and Nakamura then were beating down Styles. Jeff Hardy came back to set up the save, of course. Rusev and AJ Styles will be fighting each other for the WWE Championship at Extreme Rules. Shinsuke Nakamura will be challenging Jeff Hardy for the United States Championship at Extreme Rules. So, of course, the natural fit here is that they both now go into a program, or they both have this tag team match here on SmackDown. Good tag team match overall. Rusev and Nakamura pick up the win after Rusev hits the Machka kick on Jeff Hardy to get the 1-2-3. So it's good to see Rusev winning because for the longest time, I feel like he was just being squandered. He's officially in the WWE title picture. I don't know how long that will last, but he's got a WWE Championship match one-on-one for the first time in his career. So I'm excited for him, and we'll see what happens at Extreme Rules. What else did we have going on in this card? We had Asuka versus James Ellsworth in a lumberjack match with the entire Divas roster surrounding the ring. Of course, the week before this, we had Asuka versus James Ellsworth, and that kind of didn't go as planned. Carmella interfered. So now we had this lumberjack match to make sure that didn't happen, and Asuka got the win easily after making Ellsworth tap out to the Asuka lock. Sets up Asuka versus Carmella, the rematch for the Smackdown Women's Championship at Extreme Rules. Should be a good match there, but James Ellsworth is going to be involved. But it was actually announced that James Ellsworth will be suspended above the ring for that match in a shark cage. Not sure how I feel about that. I think they've done it a lot. They did it with Jericho a couple years ago with Kevin Owens. They had it, Enzo was in a shark cage in a feud with Big Cass a couple years ago. So they've done it quite a bit over the past couple years, and I can't think of one specific time where I thought it was really successful. I don't like it. I think it's honestly a gimmick to try and sell Mattel toys. I think there was a shark cage set that they had recently put out, and so maybe this is their continuation of that. But I personally think the whole gimmick is stupid. I don't like it. I think there's so many other ways you could go about this. Why not just ban him from ringside? Why do you have to put him in a shark cage? I don't know. But that is what's going to happen. Asuka versus Carmella for the SmackDown Women's Championship with James Ellsworth. Suspended above the ring in a shark cage. So riveting stuff there. What else do we got going on? And then the only thing else left on SmackDown to talk about was a match between Andrade Cien Almas versus Sin Cara. And I actually thought this was the highlight of the night, surprisingly enough. I thought both of these guys put on a really good match. Andrade Cien Almas is a superstar. I think he's going to be that champion for the Latin community that the WWE has always been seeking. They tried it with Del Rio. They tried it with Sin Cara. I think Cien Almas might be their guy. The only issue is when we saw him as a face before in NXT, he didn't really hit his mark. He really didn't connect. His niche is here as a heel, especially with Zelina Vega by his side. I think he's doing great work, but he's obviously, through his matches with Johnny Gargano and Aleister Black and now Sin Cara, you saw that he is a really, really talented in-ring performer. So I think a mid-card title run should be in his near future. I think that would help him a lot, but the sky's the limit right now for Cien Almas. And then Sin Cara too. Sin Cara had a really good match. Haven't seen a lot of him on television as of recently, but they had a really good match here. So all right, we are going to take another break, but when we come back, I'm going to give my official predictions for the entire Extreme Rules card, and as well as going into this week's episode of NXT. You are listening to Com Radio, Penn State's only professional wrestling exclusive podcast, and we will be right back.
Now, back to Com Radio's only WWE talk show, Marking Out with Jason Marcus and Matt Freiler.
Welcome back to Marking Out, Penn State's only pro wrestling exclusive podcast. I'm your host, Jason Marcus. Just finished wrapping up both episodes of Monday Night Raw and SmackDown from this week. I'm now going to go through the entire Extreme Rules card, give my official predictions, and then we will move forward into this week's episode of NXT. So the first match we got is the New Day versus Sanity on the Extreme Rules kickoff show. This match is a tables match, as we talked about. They set it up this past week on SmackDown in that 10-man tag team match where Kofi Kingston got the win for his team. So with this match at Extreme Rules, I think they're going to give Sanity a win here on the first pay-per-view on the main roster. I think Sanity will win in this tables match to kick off the show. Up next, we got Finn Balor versus Baron Corbin. Like I said, not too much going on here program-wise. Their beef has been on Twitter more than anything. This is a really tough one to call. My heart really wants Finn to win. I think he deserves it, but just by the way they've been going over recent weeks, I'm actually going to say Baron Corbin gets the win, or Constable Baron Corbin here. So, shame for Finn, just keeps continuing to plummet, but hopefully I'm wrong with that one. Up next, we got Braun Strowman versus Kevin Owens in a steel cage match. I think this one is Braun Strowman. He's obviously the most dominant force on the Raw roster, but he desperately needs a win despite just winning Money in the Bank. I think this should catapult him into a major program going into to SummerSlam. So I think Braun Strowman will get the win here. Up next, we got the Raw Tag Team Championship match between the Deleters of Worlds, Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt versus the B-Team, Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel. I actually could see this going both ways. I think I could very well see a surprise win for Dallas and Axel to win the Raw Tag Team Championship. I think they're deserving of it. Would set up a rematch for SummerSlam. But at the same time, they're the B team. That's kind of what they're known for, is kind of losing high-profile matches. But this one's confusing because I don't feel like Bray Wyatt and Matt Hardy's Raw Tag Team title run has been all that great. I don't really think it's elevated Wyatt's stock more than as much as it probably should have. So I'm going to actually go... I'm going to go with the B team here. I'm going to say that they're going to get a surprise win and they're going to win the Raw Tag Team Championships. And I think that's the best thing for the program. It sets up that match at SummerSlam again. So I'll be optimistic and say that the B team wins the Raw Tag Team titles. Moving on to the SmackDown Tag Team Championships, we have the Bludgeon Brothers, Harper and Rowan, defending the SmackDown Tag Team titles against Team Hell No, Kane and Daniel Bryan. I am going to go with the Bludgeon Brothers on this one. I think they're going to retain the titles. I think possible interference from The Miz that was set up this past week on SmackDown through Miz TV could possibly lead to a Miz-Daniel Bryan match at SummerSlam that we've all been waiting for. So I think that's my official prediction, that they win, that they retain the tag team titles. Plus, I think it'd just be weird to put the tag titles on Daniel Bryan and Kane. I think Daniel Bryan is your top singles babyface on the roster. To put the tag team titles on him right now, I think would just be limiting his potential or his value at the moment. So Bludgeon Brothers will retain the SmackDown tag team titles. Up next, we have the United States Championship match, the champion Jeff Hardy defending the title against Shinsuke Nakamura. Again, I could see this one going either way just because the WWE really loves Jeff. They're going to push him as a single star, they have in the past for years. But at the same end, Shinsuke's coming off that horrible series with AJ Styles where he was unable to win the WWE Championship despite 3 or 4 tries. So I'm going to go Shinsuke wins the United States Championship here. I think he needs it more than Jeff needs to retain the title to be popular. I think this is a desperate hour for Shinsuke Nakamura. If he doesn't win the United States Championship here, I don't know where he goes. So I will hope that he wins the title here and he can keep afloat among the SmackDown roster. Next, we got Roman Reigns versus Bobby Lashley, unofficially for the number 1 contendership, but you got to believe whoever comes out on top of this match is going to challenge for the Universal Championship at SummerSlam if Brock defends the title. Could go either way, but I've learned over the past couple years to never bet against Roman Reigns, so I'm not going to bet against Roman Reigns. I think Roman will pick up the win here and will be a very physical match. I'm more interested to see where Bobby Lashley goes from here as far as what his involvement's going to be at the SummerSlam pay-per-view, but I think Reigns will pick up the win here. SmackDown Women's Championship, Carmella defending the title against Asuka. As we talked about earlier, James Ellsworth will be suspended above the ring in a shark cage. Man, this one's tough. I think we are more than due for an Asuka title reign, but Carmella has been putting in good work. I think they're going to have another rematch at SummerSlam, so I think that Asuka will win the title here, and I think that'll set up their rematch for SummerSlam. That's the direction I'm going to go, but I could also just as easily see Ellsworth doing something hokey and Carmella getting the win again, but officially I'm going Asuka to win the SmackDown Women's Championship at Extreme Rules. The Raw Women's Championship, we have Alexa Bliss, the champion, defending against Nia Jax in an Extreme Rules match. Of course, Ronda Rousey will be front and center in the audience for this match, so my official prediction here is that Alexa Bliss will retain the Raw Women's Championship, setting up her program versus Rousey at SummerSlam, but Rousey will get involved. I'm not sure if it's with the finish or possibly after the match, but look for Rousey to jump the barricade here, get physical with Alexa Bliss, and start to build their program towards SummerSlam, but officially Alexa Bliss will retain the Raw Women's Championship in my prediction. Up next, we have the match I'm most excited for on the entire card, and that is the Intercontinental Championship match. The champion Dolph Ziggler defending the title against Seth Rollins in a 30-minute Iron Man match with Drew McIntyre present at ringside. This is going to be absolutely fantastic. I cannot wait to see these guys steal the show. I think this is honestly WWE's way of kind of countering that Omega Okada match that we saw in New Japan early last month. I think they're going to have, their thought process is, well, why don't we just take two of our best workers and have them go, a long period of time and show them what they can do. And I think they will more than live up to the hype here. However, my official prediction is that Drew McIntyre gets involved and Dolph Ziggler ends up retaining the Intercontinental Championship. They just put the belt on him. I really hope Seth is due for a big singles title run for the Universal Championship, but we'll see how that goes. Depends on the Reigns-Lashley finish. And yeah, so my official prediction is Dolph will win by narrow margins, but Drew McIntyre will be involved in the finish in some way. And then, of course, the last match for WWE Extreme Rules is for the WWE Championship match. It is the champion, the phenomenal one, AJ Styles, defending against Rusev in his first ever one-on-one match for the WWE Championship. I really hope these guys put on a good match. I think Rusev is one of the most underrated talents in the entire company, and I would love to see him come out on top. However, they just put AJ Styles as the cover superstar for WWE 2K19. And I know that's a silly reason, but they're going to promote him like it's nobody's business. I love Rusev. I think he's got a bright future if they book him correctly, but I just don't see him winning the title here. I think AJ Styles is going to win clean, retain the WWE Championship match, and move on to SummerSlam. Who he will face at SummerSlam, I'm not sure, but I do think that AJ Styles will retain the WWE Championship match in a good match. And it's worth noting, it hasn't been announced yet, but I really hope this match is the main event. For a long period of time, the WWE Championship has not been the main event, and it absolutely should here. The only other match I could see them putting on last is Reigns-Lashley, and I really hope that it's not the case. I hope Styles and Rusev main event this pay-per-view. They absolutely deserve it. The title deserves it, and I as much as I like Rusev, I think Styles will walk away as the champion. So those are my official predictions for the Extreme Rules pay-per-view this Sunday. Of course, you can watch it on the WWE Network. First month free for new subscribers. I believe it starts at 6 p.m. Eastern with the kickoff show. But yeah, it should be a good pay-per-view. There are definitely a couple matches on their card that stand out more than others that I'm more excited for. But overall, I am excited to watch it, and we will see how we build to SummerSlam. All right, up next, we're going to talk about this week's episode of NXT Television, and it was a good one, heavy on Undisputed Era. It started off with a match between the North American champion Adam Cole without his Undisputed Era cohorts, just Cole by himself against one-on-one with Danny Burch. Of course, Danny Burch and Oney Lorcan took on Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly at the last TakeOver Chicago event. Put in a really good match, but were unsuccessful. Oney Lorcan, of course, got hurt with that orbital bone injury. So it is just Danny Burch for this one, going one-on-one with Adam Cole. They go about 15-20 minutes. A very physical match. I thought Danny Burch looked really good here. Got some offense in, but in the end, Adam Cole was able to hit a super kick into a kneecap brainbuster, which set up his finish, the last shot to get the 1-2-3. A much-needed singles win here for Adam Cole. Really establishes him as the forefront of the Undisputed Era as a tag team and as of NXT as a whole, I would say. He's definitely one of their bigger stars, but a good showing from both guys. Cole gets the win, much needed. Up next, we had a match between Kairi Sane and Vanessa Bourne. Okay, not a huge fan of Kairi Sane. I feel like the gimmick's really cheesy. She's the Pirate Princess, for those of you who aren't hardcore NXT fans. So it was an okay match. Vanessa Bourne is an up-and-comer within the NXT women's division, but Kairi Sane gets the win here with at the anchor, her new submission finisher. It was a bridging Boston Crab here, so really looked really cool. Different from her flying elbow, the insane elbow, whatever you want to call it, but Kairi Sane does pick up the win here. Afterwards, she cuts a promo on the NXT women's champion, Shayna Baszler, saying, "I beat you once before," referring to the finals of the Mae Young Classic, and she'll do it again. So nice promo here. It actually was announced later that next week on NXT television, there will be a fatal four-way match to determine the number one contender for the NXT Women's Championship between Kairi Sane, Candice LeRae, Nikki Cross, and Bianca Belair. So the winner of that will face Shayna Baszler for the NXT Women's Championship, assumingly at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. So that is exciting news. A good match from Kairi Sane. Some other news going on in the NXT Women's Division. There was a backstage promo between Candice LeRae and Shayna Baszler where they basically got very confrontational, ended up with Candice LeRae slapping Baszler, so that match will probably start very soon or in the coming weeks of NXT television, but there was that backstage segment for what it's worth. What else we got? Aleister Black will be defending the NXT championship against Tommaso Ciampa in 2 weeks on NXT television. They had a backstage segment this week in which Gargano was talking to Aleister Black about, you got your match with Ciampa, I know Ciampa, blah, blah, blah. Ciampa comes up from behind and actually attacks Aleister Black in a vicious beatdown, hits him with the Hangman DDT onto the floor, very similar to how he beat Johnny Gargano at Takeover Chicago. Might as well have been Takeover Ciampa. So he hits that match. I guess that's now his signature. So that sets up their NXT Championship match in 2 weeks, which I'm very much looking forward to. But a good segment here to kind of build to that. And then lastly, in our main event of NXT television, we had the Undisputed Era, Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly, versus the team of Mustache Mountain, Tyler Bate, and Trent Seven for the NXT Tag Team Championships. Of course, over a couple weeks ago at the NXT UK Tournament special on the WWE Network, we saw Mustache Mountain, Tyler Bate, and Trent Seven defeat Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly to win the NXT Tag Team Championship. The rematch was this past week on NXT television, and it was a very good match, takeover-esque match, went about another 15 to 20 minutes, and it was a very, very creative finish here. Throughout the match, it was evident that Trent Seven actually had a knee brace on, so I'm not sure if he's legitimately hurt here, but the story of the finish was that Kyle O'Reilly was unmercifully going after the knee of Trent Seven, attacking it with various submission holds, and the end of the match is Tyler Bate literally throwing in the proverbial white towel because Trent Seven just wouldn't give up. So Tyler Bate gives up for his team. Undisputed Era regains the NXT Tag Team Championship. They're officially 2-time Tag Team Champions. And pretty much what I predicted a couple weeks ago when I saw that Bate and Seven won the tag titles on that UK special. Just a promotional thing, just a transitional thing. I don't think they had any intentions to really make them the forefront of the NXT Tag Team division. They will be, however, in the forefront of the NXT UK Tag Team division, but just not the North American version. That is still very much the division belonging to the Undisputed Era. So, bottom line is they regained their NXT Tag Team Championships in a very, very good match. Overall, I thought it was a really good show. Just building toward TakeOver Brooklyn. I'm most excited for Black and Ciampa in a couple weeks, although I think Gargano will get involved. But it'll be interesting to see what they have for TakeOver Brooklyn. If Ciampa and Gargano do go at each other, who will Aleister Black defend the title against? We haven't seen Lars Sullivan in a while. I think he was legitimately hurt at his last TakeOver match in TakeOver Chicago. So maybe the NXT Championship match at Brooklyn's a triple threat. Who knows? We'll have to wait a couple weeks to see how that championship match plays out. But that was NXT television this week, so pretty busy. But we're going to take another break here. But when we come back, we're going to move into New Japan Pro Wrestling, Ring of Honor, and Impact Wrestling. So you were listening to Marking Out, Penn State's only pro wrestling exclusive talk show, and we will be right back.
Now back to Com Radio's only WWE talk show, Marking Out with Jason Marcus and Matt Freiler.
Welcome back to Marking Out, Penn State's only pro wrestling exclusive talk show. I'm your host, Jason Marcus. We just finished wrapping up the week of WWE between Raw, SmackDown, and NXT television. Now, before we move on to some of the other promotions here, though, I think there is worth mentioning that this past week in the UFC, we saw Daniel Cormier win the UFC championship, and after the match, called out WWE Universal Champion Brock Lesnar in what was a very much scripted promo. Dana White, CEO of UFC, announced that it is official. Lesnar will take on Cormier at some point. Of course, Lesnar has to enter the UDFA drug testing pool before he is eligible to fight. So it probably won't be until early 2019, but that match is going to happen at some point. Ironic, though, we are seeing Lesnar more on the UFC program than we are in a WWE ring. We imagine that he will have his next Universal Championship defense at SummerSlam, but that has not been officially announced, so yet to see what will happen. But I think the last thing, my thought on this before we move on to professional wrestling, I think the difference between UFC fans and professional wrestling fans has always been UFC fans have always been like, oh, this is a legit fight, wrestling's fake, or pro wrestling's fake, And I thought it was just so interesting to see Cormier clearly cut a scripted promo, very much a professional wrestling style. Granted, their fight, when it does happen, will be an actual fight, but just very interesting to see the two worlds start to collide here. Possibly something to do with the fact that WWE let UFC have Ronda Rousey for Hall of Fame induction. Maybe there was some sort of deal there made. But either way, Lesnar appeared on UFC, pushed Daniel Cormier in the middle of the cage, sets up their match, but yet we still have no idea when the champion will be defending his title on WWE programming. So, interesting to note there, but that's enough of the UFC and Brock Lesnar. Now let's move on to some other promotions. We're going to first start with Impact Wrestling. Doesn't usually get a lot of love, but I think it is still worth talking about. They had their television program this week. Not too much going on. They had Rich Swann versus Phoenix. Rich Swann, of course, gained popularity working for the WWE through the Cruiserweight division, had some domestic violence allegations, was released from the company, now works for Impact Wrestling. Had a very good match with Phoenix. Rich Swann was able to pick up the win. A lot of athleticism shown between these guys, exactly what you expect, a lot of high-flying spots, but Rich Swann did pick up the win there. Some other things worth noting, Brian Cage and Congo Kong had a very good match. These are two of the biggest guys in professional wrestling. Just if you don't know who they are, Google them, and then imagine those two fighting each other. They were actually very athletic, though. At one point, Brian Cage hit a 619 on Congo Kong, and then he hit an F5. So that shows you how athletic and how much variety there is in Brian Cage's match. But overall, very good. And then lastly, we had the return of Homicide and Hernandez, LAX, two of the longest tenured wrestlers in Impact Wrestling's history. They came back and went right back into the tag team division there. And then, of course, the main event that they're building for is at Slammiversary on July 22nd. It will be the Impact Wrestling champion Austin Aries defending the title against Moose. So for those of you who don't know what Austin Aries was up to since he left the WWE a couple months ago, he is the Impact Wrestling champion. So he's doing really great work there. He's a natural heel, better than a babyface that he was in the WWE, at least on the main roster. But, so that is their match at Slammiversary and Impact Wrestling, and really not much more to talk about there. So, moving on, we are going to talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling. A couple weeks ago, they had their G1, or this past week, I should say, they had a G1 special in San Francisco where there was a lot going on. The main event was Kenny Omega, the champion, defending in his first title defense against Cody Rhodes. It was a really good match. We'll talk a little bit more about it later in the show. But the first match that went on here was a 10-man tag team match between two factions, Chaos and the Bullet Club. One thing you may not know about the New Japan Pro Wrestling, if you don't follow it too much, is most of all the wrestlers on their roster are somehow involved in one faction or another. So it's very faction-heavy promotion. So this first match was a 10-man tag team match. On one side you had Guido, Yoshihashi, Roppongi 3K, and Rocky Romero representing Chaos, taking on members of the Bullet Club that were Tonga Loa, Tama Tonga, Takahashi, Chase Owens, and King Haku. Yes, that is King Haku from the 80s and 90s WWE television. This was his first really big promotional televised match since 2001. Tonga Loa and Tama Tonga are actually his sons, so it makes sense that he was in there. But it was a really good match. King Haku was still very much over, despite all those years of being away. A lot of chance for him. But the finish of the match was the Bullet Club got the win after Haku hit the Tongan Death Grip, and then Tama Tonga hit an RKO. or cutter, and they got the win there. That is important to note that they did wrestle early in the match because they will have a big spot later in the match, later in the event, I should say, for some foreshadowing there. Up next, we had a tag team match between Yano and Ishii versus Zack Sabre Jr. and Minoru Suzuki of Suzuki Gun Stable. Really good match. Yano and Ishii picked up the win, surprisingly, after Zack Sabre Jr. Ate the fall here, which was surprising because just a couple weeks ago it looked like Zack Sabre Jr. was in for a big push after winning the New Japan World Cup, but he actually gets pinned here. Yano and Ishii pick up the win in a tag team match. We also had Goto versus Jeff Cobb for the Never Openweight title. Goto got the win here to retain his championship in a good match. Takahashi versus Dragon Lee. Really good match, but it made headlines for all the wrong reasons, unfortunately. Dragon Lee went for a release Dragon suplex, and Takahashi took a really gruesome bump on his neck. May have broken his neck there, so very unsafe. We wish Takahashi a speedy recovery. But yeah, it was a good match, just made headlines for all the wrong reasons. We also had another tag team match between Tetsuya Naito and Bushi versus Will Ospreay and Kazuchika Okada. Really good match. Ospreay and Okada got the win here after Ospreay hit his finisher, the Eye of Storm. So interesting to see where both of these superstars go forward in their respective careers and programs. But for the time being, Ospreay and Okada looked really good working together as a tag team, and they get the win here. Another tag team match, this time for the IWGP Tag Team Championships. We had the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson, defending the titles against Evil and Sonata. Anytime the Young Bucks are in a ring, you're going to have a match of the year caliber match, and that's no exception here. They can have a good match with a mop, literally with anybody, but they do pick up the win, and the Young Bucks retain the IWGP Tag Team titles, and another good match, and we'll see where they go from here. They are involved in the main event storyline that we'll talk about in a little bit. What else we got? A lot of tag team matches on this card. We had Kushida and Tanahashi versus Adam Hangman Page and the villain Marty Scurll of the Bullet Club. This one, Kushida and Tanahashi won in a very good match. Not much more else to say about that, though. One more, we had Juice Robinson versus Jay White for the IWGP U.S. Championship, so they are trying to build a presence in the United States. Kenny Omega was the original U.S. champion who won the belt a couple months ago, who lost it to Jay White, who then lost it in this match to Juice Robinson in a very, very good match. Juice Robinson is one of the emerging stars of New Japan Pro Wrestling. For those of you who are not aware who Juice Robinson is, but maybe follow NXT a little bit, he was in NXT for a long time under the gimmick of CJ Parker, that environmentalist guy. He had the sign that would go through the crowd. So that didn't work in NXT, but he's more than thriving in New Japan Pro Wrestling under the moniker of Juice Robinson, where he's now the IWGP US Heavyweight Champion. And then lastly, we had our main event of the night, for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, between the champion Kenny Omega versus Cody Rhodes. Fantastic match. If you can find it online, I highly suggest watching it. This is a rematch from their Super Card of Honor. They had a match WrestleMania weekend. That one wasn't for the title, though. In that match, Cody Rhodes was able to pick up the win through the help of, inadvertently, of Bullet Club members Matt and Nick Jackson, continuing their story of Kenny Omega was the leader of the Bullet Club, which is the biggest faction in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Cody Rhodes came in and kind of was like a Bullet Club Civil War, as they like to call it, a moniker between the two, fighting for control of the faction. Of course, as we talked about last night on the podcast, Kenny Omega won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship at Dominion from Kazuchika Okada. This is his first title defense in San Francisco against Cody Rhodes in a very good match. But the big story here is after the match, Cody Rhodes basically calling a truce with Kenny Omega. They obviously had a lot of tension going in the past couple months. They kind of seemed to put that to bed here. One of the things that people were really interested about was, for a while, Cody Rhodes had bleached his hair blonde as part of his gimmick. but he is now, for this match, dyed it back to his natural hair color, dark black. And the reason for that is yet to be confirmed, but there is some suspicion that he will be making some more movie and television appearances, specifically for the Marvel show Arrow, which he was on a couple times. And so there's talk about him recurring his character there. Of course, the main character for that show, actor Stephen Amell, big fan of professional wrestling, really good friends with Cody Rhodes. They, in fact, they worked together in the WWE when Cody was there for a tag team match at SummerSlam a couple of years ago. So Cody has been on his show, and the idea is that he will be continuing to reoccur his role there as the champion. So Cody Rhodes basically says, I'm here for some time off, and they kind of end that feud. Of course, Cody Rhodes' next big event will be in the All In event in September. For those of you unaware what All In is, it is a strictly independent promotion that Cody Rhodes and Matt and Nick Jackson of the Bullet Club, or they are the Young Bucks, they are promoting it by themselves, and their idea is they want to see if they can sell out a 10,000-seat arena all by themselves, not without using any people from the WWE, strictly on the basis of independent wrestlers. So that will be in September. That is Cody Rhodes' kind of main focus right now, aside from music, television, healing from injuries. So unfortunately, Cody Rhodes will most likely be out of the ring up until September. So good luck to him. As far as where Kenny Omega goes from here, after the match, as I mentioned earlier, we had Tonga Loa and Tama Tonga in that 10-man tag team match. They actually came out and attacked Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. So looks like to be setting up a rivalry there between Kenny Omega and the Samoans. So we'll see where that goes from there. I'd assume Omega will defend his title against one of them in the coming months. But that was the big story coming out of this G1 special. Cody Rhodes loses. Kenny Omega defends the title. Cody Rhodes will be going away for a while, and Kenny Omega looks to set up a new program with some other members of his Bullet Club faction. So more civil war going on between them in this arena. Also looking forward for New Japan a little bit. They, of course, are leading up to their G1 Climax tournament, which we talked about a little bit on the podcast yesterday, which is a round-robin tournament. So 8 people in one block, 8 people in another. The wrestlers from one block will all wrestle each other. If you win, you get a certain amount of points. The 8 wrestlers from the other block will all wrestle each other. If you win, you get a certain amount of points. And the 2 wrestlers who have the most points from their block will then wrestle each other. And the winner of that becomes the number 1 contender for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship and will go on to face the champion at Wrestle Kingdom 13, which, again, is New Japan Wrestling's version of WrestleMania. So big stakes coming here for New Japan Wrestling in the coming months. But that was pretty much it. Also in 205 Live, forgot to mention, it was a good match. Cedric Alexander defended the WWE Cruiserweight Championship against Hideo Itami. I didn't talk about it on the podcast yesterday, so I'll give it a little bit of time right now. But if you're looking for some content to watch on the WWE Network, go back and watch some of the recent 205 Live episodes. Mustafa Ali and Buddy Murphy had put on a series of matches that will rival anything else that you'll watch within the WWE. It was very good, specifically the last match they had, so 2 weeks ago. It was a no disqualification match. Really brutal, really, really good match. So go ahead and watch that. Mustafa Ali, I think, is very underrated. Should probably be the face of 205 Live, but Cedric Alexander is just as good. But, of course, this week, like I said, Alexander defended the title against Hideo Itami. So some good stuff to watch there. Overall, it's a really good time to be a professional wrestling fan. So I think that will do it for now. We will be back on Tuesday at the same time at noon to recap Extreme Rules and Monday Night Raw and anything else going on in the world of professional wrestling. So I want to thank you guys for listening to the podcast, and we will see you guys again on Tuesday. So take care, and bye-bye.